Okay, so we're going to first talk about the properties of a parallelogram. And we have 5 properties of parallelogram, and they are listed right here. And we're going to go through one at a time visually with these properties, and let's see what we could do with putting some tick marks to represent these properties. So what I just drew here is not a parallelogram. Kind of looks like one, but there's no evidence of a parallelogram. So right now it's just considered a quadrilateral. So in order for it to be a parallelogram, the first, and by definition, a parallelogram is what? Both pairs of opposite sides must be parallel. So I'm going to put some tick marks here. Right now we have one set of parallel lines, and now I'm going to put some other arrows. And now we have property number 1. Both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. Right, so now we're going to check out the second property of a parallelogram. Excuse me. And that is what? That is both pairs of opposite sides are going to be congruent. So let's put some tick marks in. Right now, we do not have a parallelogram. What do we need? We need tick marks. So right now, one pair of opposite sides are congruent. And what is always going to be true about parallelograms? Both pairs of opposite sides are going to be congruent. And if that's true, it's also going to be a parallelogram. So far we have parallel lines. We have opposite sides are going to be congruent. Let's take a look at number 3. Number 3 is going to be both pairs of opposite angles are going to be congruent. What does that mean? Well, let's draw a shape in here. Right now it is not a parallelogram until what? We know what? One pair of opposite sides are congruent, but that's not good enough to be a parallelogram. You need both pairs of opposite sides to be congruent. Opposite angles to be congruent. So altogether, recap, what do we have? We have opposite sides being parallel. We have opposite sides being congruent. And we have opposite angles being congruent. All right, so we have number 4 now. It says consecutive interior angles are supplementary. Well, consecutive interior angles, we've also discussed another name for those in previous lessons. That is same side interior. So where are the same side interior angles? Well, these two angles right here are not congruent necessarily, but they are what we call same side interior angles. And so are these two angles in here. Those are considered same side interior angles as well. And also these two are considered same side interior, and these two angles are considered same side interior. So we have all these angles that are on the same side interior, and it turns out there's a mathematical connection between those angles. And what is it? That means they're supplementary. So if I make up a number here, and that's 100, property number 3 tells me that this angle has to be 100 because its opposite angles are congruent. But line 4 tells us the same side interior angles have to be supplementary. So notice these two angles are supplementary. And if that one is 80, this one has to be 80 because it's an opposite angle. And now take notice. These two angles right here are supplementary. These two are supplementary. And these two are supplementary. So that's the 4th property of a parallelogram. Same side interior angles will always be supplementary. And so what else do we have? The last one is talking about what we call the diagonals. And so what are diagonals? Well, diagonals are drawn by connecting the opposite vertices. So I'm going to draw one diagonal right here from one vertice to another on the opposite side. And I'm going to draw another diagonal right there. And so if you notice what just happened with this parallelogram is the diagonals, they crisscross each other. And what happens mathematically when they crisscross each other? Well, they bisect each other. And bisect here is the word we want to stress. Bisect means it cuts this one in half and it cuts that one in half. Notice not all 4 parts are the same, just these 2 parts are the same, and these 2 little segments are the same. So there's a lot going on with parallelograms. So I'm gonna draw a blank one to start with and kind of recap all 5 properties. Let's start out with this large picture. So far we have a quadrilateral. We do not have a parallelogram yet. And so if I put this arrow in and that arrow in, we still don't have a parallelogram. We actually have a trapezoid at this point. And if I put this set of parallel lines in here, yes, now we have a parallelogram because both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. Now what's the next one going to say? Both pairs of opposite sides are going to be congruent. So that means these 2 sides have to be congruent and these 2 sides have to be congruent. It doesn't necessarily mean that all 4 sides are the same. We just want to know that both pairs of the opposite ones are the same. The next one's talking about the opposite angles, and those 2 angles have to be congruent. And this set of angles, they have to be congruent as well. The 4th one is talking about supplementary angles and same side interior. So if I make up this angle to be 120, this is going to be 120 because they're opposite angles that are congruent. But that forces this angle and this angle to be 60 degrees. Right here, because these are considered same side interior. These are considered same side interior. And these 2 are same side interior, and so are these 2. And notice all 4 are supplementary. And remember, the last one has to deal with the diagonals. So I'm going to put the diagonals in right here. It's a diagonal there, and it's a diagonal there. And so what just happened? Turns out that this segment is congruent to that one because the diagonals bisect each other, and the other diagonal bisects the other one. So I'm going to use 4 tick marks for that one and 4 tick marks for that one. So this is like a little summary of all the angles and sides and diagonals of a parallelogram. There's a lot to take in there. So please know your 5 properties of a parallelogram.